A man left everything behind in Texas, his home, his job, his life, and traveled to the heart of Africa with only three companions: Tank, a fawn French bulldog built like a brick; Ace, a blue-gray Frenchie with eyes like steel; and Bruno, a brindle warrior with a scarred face. He wasn't going on safari. He was going to find his daughter. She'd disappeared during a school trip in Kenya. Nobody could say how or why. The authorities failed. The leads were weak. And when everyone else gave up, he decided to cross the continent and find her with his own hands. Together, man and three French bulldogs, they crossed deserts, jungles, endless plains. They faced predators, loneliness, hunger, and something worse: uncertainty. Is she alive? Is she close? Did the savannah protect her or devour her? What this father found in Africa changed his destiny forever. Marcus Bennett wasn't an adventurer. He was a father. He lived in Austin, Texas, with his 12-year-old daughter Clara and three French bulldogs who were as much a part of his life as the walls of his house. Tank, massive for a Frenchie, territorial, built like a tank. Ace, the blue-gray strategist, silent as stone, always calculating. Bruno, the brindle fighter with scars across his muzzle, always alert, always at Marcus's side. Clara loved animals. She was obsessed with the wild world. When her school organized an educational trip to Kenya to visit wildlife reserves with guides and security, she was the first to raise her hand. It was a dream. Until somewhere between the border and the savannah, that dream shattered. The news came in fragments, disappeared. Nobody saw her leave. Nobody understands how. Local authorities launched a search. Protocols were activated. The embassy was contacted. But hours became days and days became silence. Marcus tried everything from Texas. Then he stopped waiting and decided to go get her himself. He didn't go alone. He boarded a plane with his three French bulldogs, flew to Morocco, and began a land journey that would take him through scorching deserts, chaotic cities, remote villages, all the way to the heart of the African savannah. He didn't trust maps, only the noses of his dogs and the strength of his will. He knew every day counted, that his daughter could be hurt, alone, terrified, or worse. But there was something stronger than fear: the certainty that as long as he breathed, he would never stop searching. If you think you know where this story goes, you don't. Hit that subscribe button, because what these three French bulldogs are about to face will leave you speechless. The desert doesn't forgive. It doesn't negotiate. The wind blows heavy with sand, and skin cracks like dried earth. Marcus moved forward without speaking, lips split, face burned by the sun, eyes hidden behind dirty glasses that no longer filtered anything. Behind him, three solid figures moved in silence: Tank, Ace, and Bruno. No shade on the path, only the buzz of dying insects and the crunch of leather under his boots. Morocco was behind them, its chaos of markets and border posts. Also behind was the last kind look from a taxi driver who refused to take him beyond the Atlas Mountains. From there, it was just him, the dogs, and land that didn't forgive mistakes. They crossed the southern regions like ghosts, past villages that watched with suspicion, abandoned stations, skeletons of rusted trucks buried in sand. The day started with brutal light and ended in bone-chilling cold. They slept under open sky, sometimes beneath a dead tree, sometimes beside a rock. The dogs slept pressed against him in silence, as if understanding each night could be the last. They ate little, drank less, shared only what was necessary. There was no margin for luxury, only for moving forward. Marcus consulted an ancient map, stained with sweat, with notes made by hand. Possible crossing, last sighting, destroyed camp, asterisk. Sometimes someone spoke to him in an unknown dialect and pointed south. He nodded, thanked them, and kept going. The dogs growled if anyone got too close. Tank especially trusted no one. In a passing village, someone mentioned a white girl with a school backpack seen near the river. Marcus almost collapsed. He showed Clara's photo, a snapshot of laughter and braids. The old man looked at it with dry eyes, like someone who'd carried too much time without crying, then pointed to the horizon where the savannah began. Marcus knew he'd crossed an invisible threshold. The road disappeared. The ground became irregular. broken. Acacia trees grew twisted like arms begging the sky. Lions slept in the shade. Hyenas laughed in the distance. The dogs tensed, sniffing the wind, marking every step. They were soldiers in enemy territory. One night Ace stood up suddenly, sniffed the air, and growled. 5 minutes later, Marcus saw the glowing eyes of a jackal in the darkness. They were surrounded, but the jackals didn't attack, just watched and left. Marcus knew then he was no longer a visitor. He was part of the food chain. No turning back. Days later, crossing a region of dry brush, he found a t-shirt. Small, colorful, with a design he'd bought for his daughter before the trip. He knelt, touched it like it was burning. The dog stood still, watching him. It wasn't proof of life, but it was something, a fragment. The sun fell like a hammer that day. Marcus walked without thinking, like an automaton. He didn't know if he'd walk 5 miles or 15. His feet hurt, his hands trembled. Bruno was bleeding from a paw after stepping on a hidden thorn. Marcus bandaged it with his shirt. That night they didn't sleep. No more words. Only the buzz of fever. The next morning they found truck tracks. Big wheels, deep grooves. Maybe from a ranger vehicle. Maybe something else. They followed. The terrain was dangerous, but there was a promise in those tracks. The promise of not being completely alone. The path led them to a canyon. Below, the river snaked like a blue wound through the earth. On the other side, the real savanna began. Immense, alive, uncontrollable. Marcus stopped at the edge. His dogs, too. There it was, the true Africa, and his daughter somewhere inside it. The savanna opened before Marcus like an ancient cathedral, vast and alive, without walls or ceiling. The ground was covered in tall grass that whispered to the wind. In the distance, scattered acacias, golden plains, black rock formations like scars, herds of antelope fleeing at the sound of a single snapping branch. The air was dense, loaded with that unmistakable smell of hot earth, broken grass, and animal presence. The 3 French bulldogs walked with heads low and ears raised, sniffing the air as if death had a perfume. Marcus didn't speak. He'd learned that in this land, words were useless noise. Everything was said with eyes, with muscles, with steps. He felt his heart pounding in his throat, not from fear, but from the certainty of crossing a threshold with no return. Africa had become a living organism, pulsing, watching him, testing him, and he walked inside it like a drop entering the ocean. The first days in the savannah were brutal. The heat didn't stop, even in shadows. Nights were a parade of sounds, roars, shrieks, footsteps. Hyenas laughed in the dark like witches. Lions roared with ancestral fury. The dogs stayed on constant guard. Tank barely slept, always alert. Ace, more serene, patrolled in circles before lying down. Bruno stayed close to Marcus, as if he knew the threat didn't always come from outside. One dawn, Marcus saw something in the distance. A small human figure on a hill. He stopped dead. His legs trembled. But as he approached, it was nothing more than a scarecrow made of branches and worn fabric, used by shepherds. However, something was wrong. Hanging from the arm of that motionless figure was a pink ribbon. Exactly the same ribbon Clara wore on her school backpack. Not a coincidence. Someone had put it there. The discovery ignited a new spark in Marcus. This was no longer just a search. It was a pursuit. Someone else knew. Someone was watching, and maybe guiding him. From that moment, every step became suspicious, every shadow a possibility. Further ahead, in a valley covered with burned bushes, they found remains, food wrappers, a piece of school tarp, a water bottle with a label in English. Clara, no doubt. Ace started barking furiously. Tank dug at the earth. She'd been there. Marcus fell to his knees, and for the first time in days let the tears flow. She was alive, or had been. At nightfall, they set up a small shelter beside a rock formation. At midnight, the dogs woke at the same time. They didn't bark, didn't growl, just tensed. They stared at the same point in the darkness and stayed motionless. Marcus sat up, grabbed his flashlight, but something told him not to turn it on. He just watched, listened. A distant drum, deep, like the heartbeat of the earth. It wasn't music. It was a warning. At dawn, he found fresh footprints a few meters from their camp. Not animal, human, small, barefoot. Marcus felt something break open in his chest. They followed the trail for hours. Sometimes it disappeared in mud. Sometimes it split. At one point, he lost it completely. The sun beat down with fury. Bruno collapsed from the heat. Marcus removed his soaked shirt, dunked it in a puddle, and used it to cool the brindle Frenchie's body. That night, they stopped beside a small lake. The dogs drank. For a moment, everything seemed calm. But when Marcus went to refill his canteen, he saw it. A human figure. On the other side of the lake, standing among the bushes. Not hiding, just watching. Marcus froze. The figure slowly raised a hand and disappeared into the trees. The dogs didn't bark, just stayed silent as if they knew it wasn't hostile, or not yet. The next day, they found an abandoned hut covered in branches and dust. Inside were symbols carved into wood, spirals, human figures, animals. In one corner lay a dirty plastic pendant, Clara's. Marcus's heart pounded. She was close. Every step now was vital. The day ended with the sky stained blood red, a violent sunset like an omen. The dogs grew nervous. The wind changed. The silence became heavy. And then Marcus heard something that wasn't a drum or a roar. It was a scream. He didn't know if it was human, but it broke something inside him. The dogs ran toward the sound. Marcus followed without thinking. And then he saw it. Blood, footprints, and a pink stain in the tall grass. The scream had been real, human, or had been. Tank launched first, followed by Ace running low to the ground. Bruno looked at Marcus, then disappeared into the tall grass. Marcus followed. Every stride burned. Every branch cut his skin. The terrain became treacherous, loose stones, hidden roots, holes filled with dry mud. When he rounded a stone outcrop, he saw churned earth. Footprints everywhere, human, canine, and others. In the center, a pink stain. It was fabric from Clara's school backpack, covered in dried mud, torn at the edges. Tank growled low, sensing something was still close. Then a sound tore through the air, a harsh, crackling, inhuman laugh. Hyenas. They emerged from the bushes like shadows with teeth. 3, 4. Hungry and had already tasted human scent. The dogs reacted like a trained unit. Tank moved forward with silent fury. Ace positioned on the flank. Bruno placed himself in front of Marcus like a shield. The fight was brutal and brief. Claws, fangs, blood in the air. One hyena fell immediately, neck broken. Another bit Ace's leg but received a charge that sent it flying against a rock. The others fled, laughing like demons. Marcus didn't move. Ace bled but stayed firm. Tank panted. Bruno trembled slightly. Silence. Again. Then Marcus heard a faint whisper, a high, broken voice behind bushes just meters away. He approached carefully, and there, among broken branches, he found something that stopped his world. A wet notebook. On the cover, written in blue marker, Clara beat. Marcus collapsed, hugged it like it was his daughter herself, opened it with trembling hands. Inside, only 2 words written in pencil, crooked as if by a weak hand. I'm alive. They didn't sleep that night. Ace limped. Marcus cleaned the wound with warm water and improvised bandages. Tank patrolled tirelessly. The fire crackled. Then a figure appeared in the twilight. A man covered in traditional fabrics, painted face, carved staff in hand. He didn't speak English, but his gaze was clear. I've been waiting for you. He sat by the fire, pulled a small pendant from his bag, and offered it to Marcus. Inside, a lock of braided hair, Clara's. Marcus's heart stopped. The man stood, pointed east, then disappeared into the darkness as if he'd never been there. Marcus understood. The girl was close, and someone else had found her first. At dawn, they resumed the march with direction, with purpose. The landscape changed. More trees, more humidity, more life. At noon, they crossed a stream. On the opposite bank, footprints. Small, fresh. Clara. The dogs started running. Marcus followed with new strength. He didn't feel the pain, only felt the call of his blood. At the top of a hill they stopped. There in the distance among the trees, a village. Round mud houses, thatched roofs, smoke rising from fires, voices, children's laughter, tribal songs. And then he saw her, a girl sitting on the ground, wearing different clothes, hair longer, but unmistakable. Clara. Marcus took a step, and someone stepped in his way. An elder with a spear, firm face, eyes that said, "First you must understand what happened here." The elder spoke in a language Marcus didn't understand, then pointed to the hill behind him. The girl now belongs to the earth. A group of women emerged from a hut. One raised a hand, in her eyes not fear, but compassion. She approached, touched his arm, offered water. Marcus lowered his head, accepted. The dogs, as if following the same invisible code, calmed down. They entered the village. The place seemed frozen in time, fire in the center, children watching silently from the shadows. They offered food, cooked roots, a sour broth. He didn't ask what it was. He ate. The dogs were also fed. As night fell, they led him to a separate hut. There finally someone spoke his language. A young woman with a strange accent, a mix of broken English and something more ancient. She told him Clara had been found by a group of village hunters. She was surrounded by hyenas, had no strength to scream, just cried. They brought her here, cared for her. The girl was alive, but she didn't want to leave. Marcus felt the world break again. "She doesn't want to leave?" the woman explained. Clara didn't speak much, barely ate. She hid during the day and only came out when there was no sun. But over time, she began watching the children, imitating their games, following the women to the river. She adapted, and when asked about her family, she just cried, didn't want to remember. Marcus stayed silent. The fire crackled softly. The dogs slept by the door. They were also waiting. At dawn, they allowed him to see her. They took him to the river's edge. There she was, sitting on a stone, braiding dry leaves, thinner, taller, wilder. When she saw him, she didn't run, didn't scream, just looked at him and said his name. "Dad!" The word was a blow, a soft knife, a return. Marcus knelt, didn't want to touch her, just see her. She looked at him as if still unsure if he was real. The dogs approached. Bruno went first, sniffed her, lay down beside her. Tank stayed back like a guardian. Ace circled her with a slight whimper. She smiled, for the first time. They spoke little. She told scattered things, that she got lost, that she walked for days, that animals surrounded her but didn't touch her, that she thought of him every night. But when the village found her, she felt she'd died and been reborn, that this land was something else, that here pain was different, and that she no longer knew how to go back. Marcus understood. Not all returns are immediate. Some returns need time. That night, the village celebrated. They danced around the fire. Children sang. Women clapped. And in the middle of the circle, Clara danced too. Her eyes sought her father's, and for the first time, there was no shadow in them. But the story wasn't finished. At the forest's edge, someone watched. Not a villager, not an animal. The dogs tensed. Tank showed teeth. Ace growled. Bruno stepped forward, and the wind brought a smell that wasn't fire or earth. It was the smell of something that had been following them. From before, from always. Clara was alive, but not safe, and something was coming for them. Dawn came with preparations. The elder gave Marcus a small bone pendant. "Protection," he said with gestures. "The girl must return, but she will carry this land with her forever." They walked for days to reach a small ranger outpost. From there, helicopters took them to the nearest city. News crews, paperwork, questions, but none of it mattered. Tank survived, limping on one paw. Ace, too. Bruno never barked again, but was always close, watching. Clara spoke little but smiled more. And sometimes, while drawing, she painted eyes, many eyes in the darkness. Watching. Marcus never returned to being the same. Nobody crosses the Savanna and comes back intact. The land didn't take Clara. But it left invisible marks in her silences, in how she looked at the wind, in the calm with which she faced darkness. The dogs aged beside him, never ran the same, but slept with the peace of those who fulfilled their mission. Tank still guarded the door. Ace lay close to Clara. Bruno, always in shadow, seemed to guard something more than the house. Sometimes Marcus woke at night with a feeling, as if something still watched them. Marcus didn't just find his daughter in Africa. He found what remains of a man when everything is lost, and what's born when love is stronger than fear.